Fact. Everyone effing loves Rod Belding. Fiction. The Fabulous Belding Boys is the only time Ed Blatchford played Rod Belding. Huh? Sounds like it's time for a Rod Belding deep dive. Back in 2009, a little production company in Austin, Texas called Save the Empire made a mockumentary about Rod Belding. The premise was that 4 young men believed that Rod had really gotten the flu, thereby maintaining his hero status despite bailing on the class trip. The 9-minute project walks through the rise of Rod Belding, or how he gained his cult status as a totally rad guy, the fall of Rod Belding, or why some perceive him as being a loser, and the theoretical redemption the guys latch onto, which is them basically ignoring the reality of Inga and saying Rod totes legit had the flu. Is Lost Heroes any good? Visually? Absolutely. The editing is great. Lost Heroes really gives off a documentary vibe with its use of soft focus, multi-angles for talking headshots, and snappy scene transitions. I mean, the thing looks and sounds really good. But that might be where my praise ends. For those who are already familiar with my videos, you know that I tend to harp on continuity. I'm afraid Lost Heroes puts a big target on its back. As part of the creation of the mockumentary, the actors were sat in front of a camera and they basically ad-libbed everything. The structure of the project was then manufactured by the top-notch editor. But one of the problems with this is that one of the points they run with is that everything at Bayside went to crap after Rod Belding left, including Jesse's addiction to success and reliance on caffeine pills. Students of Saved by the Bell are going to know that Jesse's song aired a month prior to the Fabulous Belding Boys. Further, Jesse's song was produced as part of the 10th grade season, whereas the Fabulous Belding Boys was supposed to be the 11th grade season opener. The gag just loses credibility because they didn't really plan out the talking points. That said, I did chuckle when one of the negatives of Rod leaving was Tori.
It's just bad news after Rod left.
Now, I did like that they included a fake professor, because it stokes the false hope in me that I could be paid for my stupid infatuation with Saved by the Bell. Though I wouldn't be a Rod-ologist. Maybe a Kelly Kapowskifer? Or a PhD in Stud Muffin AC? So why even discuss this good-spirited but ultimately middling project in the first place? Well, when Save the Empire uploaded the video made its way to Ed Blatchford. He found it very amusing and suggested that he work with Save the Empire on a sequel. The guys flew out to Los Angeles, met Ed Blatchford, and shot Saved by the Belding in 3 days. The format is part mockumentary and part narrative. But instead of relying solely on talking heads, the project mainly uses voiceovers.
Well, just made it back to the hotel. Had a great day.
The Rod-ologist is back, as is this guy's yellow shirt, and he is trying to counsel the quad Rod schlobs into accepting that Rod Belding isn't real. When all else fails, he challenges them to go to LA and find Rod Belding, knowing that they will be disappointed when they can't find a fictional character. Spoiler alert, they find Ed Blatchford's house almost immediately. Ed mistakes the boys and their camera crew for an appointment with True Hollywood Stories, and he invites them into his house. He quickly learns that the boys are a bit touched in the head and begins to play along with their delusions. He even agrees to watch the documentary with them, which is actually just the episode of The Fabulous Belding Boys. He even starts playing the role a bit.
All right, now take a breath. Go for it.
All right. Okay, pause it right here. I love the scene where you teach the kids CPR.
Great scene. Great.
Rod, now, are you a certified instructor, or were you just born with that?
Oh, it's just instinct, man. I mean, you just gotta get in these situations. You gotta react. I mean, you gotta grab life. You gotta make it your own, right there, right now. You gotta grab life.
The man-spreading and paper airplane are a nice touch. The boys plan on hitting an In-N-Out for dinner, but Ed offers to take them out for steak. They get all dapper for a night out with their hero when a lady talks Ed into ditching his plans. Hello, Mr. Belding.
I'm not going to let you leave those kids.
In a fun surprise cameo, Dennis Haskins shows up to bail Ed out of dinner plans. Viewed solely through the eyes of a fan, this is a charming short film. Where else are you going to find a legendary one-off Saved by the Bell character reprising their role? Ed Blatchford does a great job owning his character. The Dennis Haskins out of nowhere was a delicious addition, and again, the editing deserves some love. But only some. The transitions and effects were great, but there were some scenes that felt like they dragged for a little too long. Instead of lengthy dialogue, it would have been nice to get just an inkling into this sight gag. We have to assume that he thought Ed Blatchford as Rod Belding would immediately take him whitewater rafting, right? But now we're just assuming absurd on top of already absurd. The general storyline is fun, but it gets undercut with some pretty glaring plot holes. First off, having a therapist send the boys off to find Rod Belding is a funny premise, but how they find him is weak sauce. They buy a map to famous people's houses, and Rod Belding, a substitute teacher, just happens to be on it. That's a stretch. Further, just like in Lost Heroes, the boys are all in on the flu is true theory, despite carrying the documentary around with them that shows that Rod bailed to shack up with the stewardess. I mean, at least we see that these boys are a bit dim, but then doesn't that put a liability back on the therapist for sending them out into the wild unsupervised? My biggest complaint deals with another aspect of the therapist. While the boys are with Ed, the therapist has a talking head where he notes that something sinister might dwell within Ed. Because of this brief interjection, the rest of the presentation becomes, okay, so this is where Ed acts like Rob and invites the boys out for something awesome. And this is where an Inga character shows up and, hey, it's the real Big Popper. And this is where Dennis Haskins is going to have to explain that Ed got the flu and would take them out instead. Without the therapist's interjection, this all could have come off as a fun homage to the fabulous Belding boys. Instead, the therapist's words act as the death knell for the boys, and we watch knowing exactly what will play out. Even this scene loses some of its campy power.
Mr. Belding.
Uh-huh.
Why didn't you tell them the truth?
About what?
I heard everything.
Oh, you did. Look, I know how much Ed meant to you.
You mean Rod?
I know how much Rod meant to you. And I didn't want to ruin that. You know, he always was the cooler Belding.
Maybe. We got the better Belding.
Regardless of the imperfections, Save the Empire put together two ambitious projects, one of which gleefully reunited two Saved by the Bell icons. I have to applaud anyone who creates something that adequately showcases their love of Saved by the Bell, even if there are some faults. When I initially made this video, the only way to find these short films was through some back alley internet sources. Save the Empire has since uploaded these projects to YouTube, and I'll put some links in the description below.